In about a month, some Vikings players are going to embark on their last chance to make an impact. What exactly can they do about it? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, even days here in June. And thank you so much if you are listening here in the doldrums of summer. I appreciate you all so very much. If you are new here, hello and welcome. My name is Luke, and you can find this show anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. Just search out Locked On Vikings on any podcasting app, as well as YouTube or even Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Today on the show, I want to go over a few players who I'm going to call like disappointing roster bubble players. Guys who maybe are on their last run and if camp goes poorly would get cut. That's kind of the world that I'm in and what they need to do to turn their fortunes around. This is, we'll talk about like Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth. And those are the guys that kind of are the popular answers to that question. But we'll go into some others as well as an undrafted rookie in the Everyman series. But let's start with Lewis Cine. Let's just get right out of the way, right? Lewis Cine is, a lot of reports are starting to kind of, like people who watched OTAs, Alec Lewis has made this observation. We talked to him about OTAs about a month ago. But anybody in the media who was like watching OTAs was like, yeah, Lewis Cine's still running with the threes. He still seems like pretty firmly sixth on that depth chart. And with Kyrie Jackson joining the corners and Shaq Griffin joining the corners and kind of replacing Joejuan Williams in a more rosterable way, there is more roster pressure in that DB room than there was before, so somebody's got to be the odd man out. And I think Cine's a pretty good pick for that, where we stand right now. If, you know, that perception is bearing out, that he's kind of on the outs. But that doesn't mean that it is over. There is still... you're down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, that kind of thing. Game ain't 000. It just looks bleak. So I like to approach these things in a more productive way, right? I think a lot of people will, and probably will look at this and say, gosh, how mad are you now that we don't have Kyle Hamilton? And that's just not me. I'm not a hindsight guy like that. Even though that is what I wanted, and there's a live stream where I was like, do it. It is what it is. It's the draft. You missed one. Okay, next. But instead of going through and like trying to turn this into a bigger, grander thing than it is, so I think a lot of people look at, well, they did a draft bust, therefore the GM is bad, therefore they should fire him. Like they'll take those bigger leaps up. They'll zoom it further out. I don't want to do that. I want to be productive here and try to talk about what we need to see from these people for them to turn that around. Because if it were truly over, if there were 0% chance that Lewis Cine would make the roster, just cut him right now. But you're not going to do that. You're going to give him every shot in camp to show that he has, made a Mackenzie Alexander style third-year leap. It's a thing that happens sometimes, so give him a chance to do it. And truly, I think for a first-round pick, you should at least let him play out the rookie contract, right? It's not like he's expensive. But what you need to see from Lewis Cine, there are a few ways for him to kind of turn this around and buy himself more time, right? And a big one is get good at special teams. Lewis Cine was terrible at special teams in camp last year. He did not play at all in special teams, and that's why he was a healthy scratch and, below Jay Ward on that depth chart, because Jay Ward played special teams and did well at special teams. So he was the one that got to dress, and that means when we needed someone to go in because of injury, or just rotation, he was the one with pads on. So he was the one that went in, and now he's getting experience. Now he's just straight up above you on the depth chart. You got leapt from scrimmage. You got leapfrogged because someone beat you from special teams. So you have to be better at that, which for a safety whose whole thing was like angles, right? And for Cine, because he had he has a pretty sick athleticism. That was his thing coming out. He was like quick trigger and he could close down a lot of space, which was really great for the quarters, back it off, and then trigger downhill defense. That was Donatel. That was why we brought him in, right? And so for that skill set to not translate to special teams is really unfortunate. But the thing is, after that leg injury in London in his rookie year, I don't know if that athleticism is the same. And that might be why. I mean, he got hurt on special teams. He did win the punt gunner job in his rookie year and then didn't win it his second year. So you have to wonder how much that athleticism has gone down. Of course, it's hard to tell even, to the naked eye when you're sitting there in camp, which is the only real exposure any of us have had to him. It's hard to tell if that's true or not, but it surely does imply that. So that's part of it. But I think the big thing we all saw in preseason, tackle. You must be better at tackling. Maybe there was you could ask him to bulk up a little bit more, but I think I don't need that. I need form, right? I need shoot the opposite hit, wrap, gator tackle, that kind of thing. He went in, there's a play that I think a lot of people think of when they think of Scene in the preseason last year was against Seattle, where he just kind of got bowled over by, I forget who it was, some running back. I think it was Zach Charbonnet, actually. And he just gets totally run over, right? And somebody else has to come in and clean it up. And he played the play really correctly, right? He put himself in the right position, but when he went to the tackle, he took it straight on, he lowered his shoulder, and he just kind of got beat on that. And when you're going up against running backs, especially, when you're more of a lanky, rangy safety, these running backs are bowling balls of people. You're not going to light them up like it was in college. So you have to tackle with proper form. If you can get those two things down, I think you buy yourself time. But I think the thing that is holding Lewis Cine back from really living up to that first round expectation is just an instinct thing as well. Again, you get a player that can trigger late, but make it up by being so fast that, you can kind of make that up. That doesn't fly as much in the NFL because things move at a faster speed. To compare to Kyle Hamilton triggers early a lot, and that has helped to make up for a lack of top end speed. That 4.6 40 that he ran that I think was the thing that convinced the Vikings that Lewis Cine wasn't that much of a step down and that the trade down was worth it and all that. If you're not leaving early, and if you're leaving late, it doesn't matter how fast you are, and small issues are just so mega punished at the NFL level that all of those things combine to create this super bleak looking situation. So give me two of those three, right? Get good at special teams, trigger a little bit earlier, learn how to tackle. Give me two of those three, and I think you've got something you can work with. But if you don't get two of those three, then I think we might be cutting a first round pick in year 3, which is pretty rough. The other guy that may be on the outs in this DB, I think you cut one of the DBs between Shaq Griffin, Kyrie Jackson, and all the guys that made the team last year. I think you cut one of them. And that one, maybe if it's not Cine, it's Booth. I don't think you have to cut both of them, but I think you cut one of them. So the thing about Booth is that he is really good on special teams. So I think his roster spot is easier to project. But for him to get more playing time, I mean, he got leapt by a Caleb Evans and then in his rookie year. And then in the next year, he got leapt by Mekhi Blackman and he didn't get reps. So the problem here, it's the problem it's always been. And I do think it got better last year, but I think we need to just see that progress continue, is patience. DBs have to be patient. They have to be fast and they have to be, quick reflexes, but they also have to not overreact. And Booth just would always take the cheese. That was his thing rookie year. I think in the limited action he got better at that, and I want to see it do better. I want to see it continue to improve. But I think as long as he has that bedrock of special teams, you're in pads on Sundays, and you can develop from there. So I don't know if I would call Booth. I don't know. I mean, my jaw wouldn't hit the floor if he got cut. But I don't think you have to, just numbers game wise. It's not that tight. You need to cut one of these DBs, and I think Cine gets cut before he does. But I would rather turn my attention to some of the other players that were on the team last year that have some work to do, I guess is what we'll say. So that will be next. We got a lot more. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by eBay Motors. that is the best place to get whatever it is your car needs, whether it is like an upgrade, like a supercharger or an LED headlight, or whatever your car needs to get it up to peak performance, whether it's speed, power, just straight up aesthetics, whatever you need, you can find it at eBay Motors. They have over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. So forget all of the, I've got a 2020, this kind of car. Does it work? Is this a compatible part? eBay can take care of all of that for you. Go to ebaymotors.com and keep your ride or die alive. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. If you want, you can go find Locked On Minnesota Sports. You can find me on the Minnesota Football Party, talking a little bit of Jordan Addison, some nerdy stats maybe, whatever we end up getting up to on there, and a 24/7 live stream on that YouTube channel as well for Minnesota Sports Talk all day long. I have a few other players that I think are on the roster bubble that maybe would make the team, maybe won't make the team. And where status quo is uncertain about them. And here's what I think they need to do to instill more confidence. The next one is, I think, an interesting case because he made the roster last year. And I don't think anybody's going to put him in the projection this year. And that's Andre Carter. And it's a tough world at edge rusher when you're kind of at the bottom of there. Even Patrick Jones, people are saying, what if he gets cut? I don't think so. I think he's good enough not to. But I mean, look, you lost one guy in terms of just like roster pressure, right? You lost one guy in Daniel Hunter and a second guy in DJ Wanham, and you replaced with three, right? With Van Ginkel, Grenard, and now Dallas Turner. So there's additional roster pressure. It is there are more feasibly rosterable players in that room than there were before. So when you were the fifth guy, that doesn't bode very well for you. And with Andre Carter as well, he was, I think special teams got him suited up as well, which I think helped him a lot to get some playing time. But the reps he did get in were pretty rough, not great stuff. So for Andre Carter, we have to remember the track that he was on. Last year wasn't supposed to be anything. Like, I thought last year he would be banished to the practice squad and then like sign a futures contract, and that we would just like, they'd put him in a incubation chamber and we wouldn't touch him until this year. And this would be the year that I thought, okay, now maybe let's see if we have something from this kid from Army, because now he's had a year with an NFL weight training regimen and an NFL nutrition, and without doing the thing, if you remember from the Everyman series last year, when you're military, you have to be in a certain kind of shape. There's different kinds of, there's football play in shape, and then there's military in shape. Military in shape is a lot more cardio, a lot less bulk, a lot less raw strength, and a lot more about stamina, especially in the Army itself. Football is not really about that. It's about short bursts of creating a lot of power, so it's a different kind of athleticism, and you have to kind of mold your body to get that. So with a year now removed from what he was doing in the Army, he's done with the Army, he's not doing that kind of workout anymore. Theoretically, this is when he was supposed to come online. So for Andre Carter, the thing is just prove it now. There's nowhere to hide. Last year there was a really good excuse if you sucked. There is not that excuse this year. So now go prove it, and I think outplay Patrick Jones, right? Show a little bit more strength in particular. Hold your spot. Don't get washed out embarrassingly when you're trying to set the edge. And then we talk about it. But until then, you get your group of four with Turner, Grenard, Van Ginkel, Pat Jones, and then you have guys like Jihad Ward maybe. You have guys like Gabe Murphy as an undrafted free agent that you're competing with as well, and you're in this like super, super fiery competition for that fifth spot. The next guy on this list here is Jaren Hall, a fifth round pick in his second year. I think by year two, if you're a day three guy, and not like a high day three guy, you're like a mid to low day three guy, like kind of round, like middle around 5 and on where Jaren Hall went, then you kind of don't get to live on your draft pedigree anymore. Like as a fifth round rookie, you have a pretty good odds to make the team. You won't always make the team. 5th round rookies do get cut sometimes, but there's still that little bit of like, well, if you show me anything, we'll give you another year and see if you develop. That you might not say about like a 7th round pick, and certainly not about an undrafted rookie. But by year 2, it's like, okay, show me more, right? Now he did get in. He had kind of half good snaps, half bad snaps. It wasn't a total abject disaster for Jaren Hall like it was, I think, for Andre Carter. But because JJ McCarthy has entered the fold here, Nick Mullins still in the building, Sam Darnold in the building, you are QB4. QB4 doesn't make the roster. So what he needs to do is beat out Nick Mullins. And the way for him to beat out Nick Mullins has to do with the nuances of quarterbacking. And that's going to be very hard because all of the coaching attention is going to be on the rookie. So you kind of got to do this on your own, Jaren Hall, where you have to get used to the quicker, tighter dropbacks that Nick Mullins did, that Kirk Cousins did last year, that Jaren Hall did not do. And if you remember, that Packers game had a lot more long dropbacks. And because his dropback depth was so long, on 7-step drops, he was dropping back like 10 yards. And that the tackles can't protect that much. That's too deep. So fix that dropback, get more consistent, get tighter, faster, shorter with it, so that you can get out and you can have the right timings, and we don't have to go into a game saying, okay, I guess we're just doing bootlegs all day, which is basically what happened with the Packers. That is, I think if you can't get that, I think forget there's just not room for you on this roster. I think you just can't make a team if you can't get your dropbacks down correctly. I mean, that's really fundamental. So it's about those fundamental, but it's the detailed part of the fundamentals. It's the, hey, you did that step properly, but you did it 2 yards deep. Or, you did it a yard too deep. Like this, we're not talking about major changes here. It's consistency and it's accuracy down to, it's a smaller margin for error in those things with his footwork. And look, if he can accomplish that, the justification is there. You can say, hey, Jaren Hall's coming around. He is looking like a good Devy QB3. Nick Mullins, we love you, but we already have a veteran backup that can, be our volatile player. That's Sam Darnold. And if Jaren Hall can play well enough where we trust him not to throw 4 interceptions if he has to go in for spot duty, then we can kind of feel good without you. Save the 10 cents that it saves. It doesn't save much, but it's something. And kind of say, let's just keep this quarterback room that much younger. And if we feel we really need a veteran presence in that QB room, we do still have Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold kind of replaces Nick Mullins instead of Nick Mullins kicking Jaren Hall out. That I think has to be the way that it goes down. And if Jaren Hall can show enough, then you have that justification. But like the onus is on him to show that we can trust you to show up and actually like lead a functional offense, which the last time he was on the field didn't happen. An interesting one here is Kenneth Nwangwu, I think, is probably a little bit on the bubble. So here's the thing. He's comfortably running back 3 until proven otherwise, and that'll put you on the roster. Running back 3 and kickoff returner will put you on the roster, because even if you devalue kickoff returners because of the new rules, which I'm not sure is true, but even if you do think it's true, somebody still needs to do it. Like, you still need to put somebody back there. So that is a job that you can win and that you can use to justify your roster spot. But being running back 3 as well, it'll help. But he just needs to be a faster reactor. That's, I guess, the thing with Nwangwu. And with the new kickoff rules, that might bode poorly for him in particular, because his issue is being a step or two late on choosing a gap and hitting it. And then the gap closes on you. Like, the running game develops and then, holes open and close instantaneously. And you kind of have to see what's going to happen before it happens so that you can, like, that's what running back vision is, right? And it's, he's making, a lot of times he'll make the correct decision, but he'll make it just a step too slow, fractions of a second. So we just need to quicken that up a little bit. But the new kickoff rules also will force you to make decisions faster. I'll never forget, and this is probably the 900th time I've said this on this show, Cordero Patterson was asked once why he doesn't return punts. He was still in Minnesota in the time. I think he was in Chicago. And he asked, why don't you do punts? You're so good at kickoffs. Why don't you do punts? And he says, well, punts, I have to react faster. I don't get a bunch of time to pick my angle, to read the field, to set things up. So I was never as good at punts because I needed to read the field way faster on a punt return and wasn't good at that. But with a kick return, I have all this time and I can set myself up and I can really use that better. And I think the new kickoff will be a little bit more like punts because you catch the ball and the opposing players are already, 20, 15 yards away from you and there's blockers and you're essentially going to set up run plays from there. So it's going to react a lot like that. And Cordero Patterson, it took him like 7 years to actually learn how to be an effective running back. So I think Wongwu, and I recall from the Everyman series, Wongwu cares about special teams more than he cares about being a running back from scrimmage. He always has. And like that's always been the thing he identifies himself as. But now those skill sets are a little bit more hand in hand. So it's time to put up or shut up, right? It's time to show that skill that you've also had. And if you can get it, you get both jobs. But if you don't get it, you might be on the outside looking in. A fourth guy that we'll talk about more soon is N'Keal Harry, who technically didn't make the 53-man. I think he was on the practice. I think he got bumped up to the roster eventually in the season, but he didn't make the 53 like initially. And was a practice squad kind of blocking wide receiver. Now he's being moved to tight end into a room that is full of wide receiver to tight end converts. And one of those guys is Trey Knox, who will be the subject of today's entry into the Everyman series. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Look, FanDuel has a lot of cool stuff going on all the time. Go check out the app or the website frequently because you'll get all kinds of cool stuff. But if you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and you haven't signed up yet, go sign up there and you can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Right now, Justin Jefferson's over-under is set at 1,300.5, which, assuming he plays the whole season, would be the worst season of his career by yards per game. So as long as you don't think that'll happen, go ahead and take it. That's at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim that $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Trey Knox did not go to Middle Tennessee State University, but he did grow up in that town, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's about 20 minutes outside Nashville. And Trey Knox's dad grew up playing football, but a brain tumor prematurely ended his career. So it's not too surprising that he kind of nudged his son into football, and Trey Knox very much took to football. For most of his time as a youth player and as a high school player, he was good enough as a receiver to just kind of show up and play. And he was asked about this idea, or he kind of mentioned this at the combine when he was talking about an old coach that really had an impact on him, his receivers coach in high school. And he kind of said, the superstars they know that they don't really have to go hard in practice, that they can show up on Friday and they can be just a better athlete than the guy across from them and ball out. And yeah, a lot of guys are like that. I think when you do a series like this, you find plenty of guys that are not like that made it to the NFL because they outworked everybody all the way back from high school, even though they didn't have to because they were athletic enough not to have to, but they still wanted to optimize. Like, I think you do find a lot of those people in the NFL, but hey, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, you can show up on a Friday if you're good enough and just kind of say, yeah, whatever, like, I'll just ball out. He, I think, got a big kick out of being, the superstar receiver, the highly recruited, prize for SEC's calling kind of guy. His receivers coach, named Alex Track, has helped him understand kind of the value, though, of practice and of trying to get 1% better every day, even if you're already better than all the guys across from you, of the value that extra work can bring and just how much more you can push yourself, even if you feel like maybe you don't have to win. He's pretty nostalgic for his high school. Like, you can just see it in his face when he's talking about it, that was like the times when football was just a fun game that I was really effortlessly good at. But you get to this level, hey, you get to college, but you get to this level especially, and it is all work, no play. Sometimes. Once you get into the game, you get in the end zone, you can play a little bit. But a lot of people, it reminds me of a something from I think it was J.J. Watt on Hard Knocks. I think it was before he left the Texans. Was talking to some rookie, and he was telling him about this is basically my daily schedule. I get up, I work out, I have a protein shake, I study film, I work out, I have a protein shake, I go to bed at 7 p.m. because I got to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow. And he's like, it sucks, but it's what you have to do. But it sucks. He was actually kind of complaining about that. And it's J.J. Watt, one of the most hardworking players in league history, talking about how this really sucks, but it has to suck for you to be successful. And it takes a little bit, I think, the magic and the mystery out of football. When you are a high school stud, it's fun. And it's all fun because you didn't even really have to work that hard at practice because you were so good. But learning to love the tedious version of football is, I think, a really big key to the success it takes just to make it to an NFL training camp. At Arkansas, after he had committed there, he didn't emerge the way that he expected. And maybe that was part of it. Who's to say? Maybe it was just about his body type. He maybe could have afforded a couple more pounds. Maybe he just wasn't as good of a receiver as he thought. But for whatever reason, he'll readily volunteer this now. He says he has a crisis of confidence at Arkansas. He's getting beaten out by the other receiver in his recruiting class, which is Treylon Burks. And he's falling down the depth chart. He was sort of billed as this exciting new, future of the program, but he's not getting that. He's not doing that. Spring of 2020, this is going to be his sophomore year. Not only does COVID shut everything down, which is going to have its effect on everybody, but he himself gets sick. And I don't think it was COVID. He gets something else. Because he's throwing up and losing weight. He gets some kind of stomach thing. And he misses a bunch of spring with the illness, so he misses a bunch of practice. But also, crucially, he loses 10 pounds. He got something serious. This 10 pounds is going to set him so far back. And you would think that, COVID would help him gain the weight back. Surely it helped me. But no, a lot of you can relate. But he can't, try as he might. Once he's healthy again, he cannot get that bulk back. He's eating just as much as his body will take. But with the workout regimen, there's a lot of running up hills, there's running with dumbbells and stuff, the workout regimen that he has to also try to be in football shape. He can't quite get that to balance out right. He has a fast metabolism and the weight's just not coming. The key to fixing this problem, he will find I think it's on Arkansas's campus. And it's a shake stand based, a protein shake place that is open very late. And it has something called the Kiwi Quencher, which sounds like heat, to be honest with you. 3/4 cup Greek yogurt, half a cup of almond milk, 2 scoops of protein powder, a cup and a half of kiwis, 6 strawberries, and some ice. That sounds awesome. I would absolutely crush a whole bunch of those as well if I were trying to gain weight. For whatever reason, that's what it gets. He's addicted to them, right? He literally calls them addictive. And he has so many of those that that is what he can finally get the calories he needs to get by just pounding a million of those. By the 2022 season, however, he's figured that problem out, but he still hasn't gotten in as a receiver the way he wants to. And now Treylon Burks is out. Treylon Burks has declared for the draft, so he's theoretically should be the guy, but he's still not going to be the guy. He's brainstorming, and he thinks, people have kind of told me a lot that I look like maybe I should be a tight end. I'm pretty good at blocking. Let's try this. So he goes up to a tight end coach, who is also the guy I think that helped recruit him, named Dowell Loggains. He has a relationship with this guy, and he says, "Hey, can I try tight end?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure. Get in the meeting room. Let's see." And he really takes to it. So that move to tight end was just a senior year of Arkansas thing, and it works out because for whatever problems he had as a receiver, that level of receiver as a tight end, hey, that's a good receiving tight end. He's got blocking down. He's figured out the bulking up, gaining weight thing. We've kind of cracked that code. Really, the only problem that he has is like learning the run game. Like that's really the most challenging thing for him is learning, like the way he describes it is like having to learn everything and understand everything you already had to memorize about the passing game, but now you have to know the run game as well. And just learning both sides of those playbook now that playbook now and having like that all around knowledge, getting those assignments properly, and then having to work on your blocking plus work on your receiving at the same time, and like learning how to split your time, I think too, is just one of those challenges. But it was perfect because the Arkansas tight end room was kind of maligned that they didn't really have a tight end that the program trusted. And so Trey Knox filled that void. He found the playing time and he kind of found a niche. He'll have a pretty good season in 2022 as a tight end. It'll definitely be his best season at Arkansas. And then Dowell Loggins, is how I'll go with pronouncing it, takes a job with the South Carolina Gamecocks. He gets to be the OC/QB coach. When he was the tight ends coach before, I would take that too, I think. I think that sounds like a promotion if that's the kind of coach you want to be. So he takes that and he goes to another school, and people start to speculate without Trey Knox ever saying anything. There's no reports or anything, but people are going, well, we know those two guys are tight. So is he going to enter the transfer portal and go to South Carolina? Unclear how it goes down. Obviously, that information is going to be kept very close to the vest, especially the timeline of events, because there's all kinds of strict rules about this stuff, and nobody wants to accidentally out themselves for breaking it. But at the end of the day, he does enter the transfer portal, and he does actually go to South Carolina. So he has this kind of fresh start at SC as a true blue tight end. Like he's the like stink of receiver that didn't work out, and let's see if this works out kind of thing is off of him. And he can just say, okay, here I am your new tight end. And he has a good enough year, of course, to get the Vikings' attention. So now he enters the room with Robert Tonyan that did the same thing with, I think Johnny Munt actually played quarterback a little bit, if I recall, and wide receiver. And he did that, but he did that in high school. You have N'Keal Harry, who's now making the transition himself. There's a lot of people that are like wide receivers turned tight ends here that are all kind of vying for like one roster spot. Maybe call it 1.5 roster spots, because there'll be a roster spot that's only open till TJ Hawkinson gets back. And he'll, try to make this team as probably the longest shot in the whole room, outside of maybe Samus Reyes, who, by the way, we did the Everyman series on him yesterday. It's insane. Go listen to it. I will talk to you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.